Emily Parker hurried through the crowded halls of Los Angeles International Airport, her heart racing as she checked her phone for the time. Her flight from New York had been delayed, and she was already late for a meeting she couldn't afford to miss. Her curly brown hair was tied in a messy bun, her suitcase wheels rattling loudly against the tile floor. She grabbed a coffee from the nearest cafe, barely sipping it before joining the long line at the baggage claim. The carousel began to spin, and people rushed forward. Emily scanned the bags quickly, searching for her familiar black suitcase with a red ribbon tied to the handle. She spotted one that looked exactly like hers and, without much thought, lifted it off the belt. The luggage was slightly heavier than usual, but she didn't stop to think twice. She had a taxi to catch. As she exited the airport, the California sun blinded her for a moment. She squinted and breathed in the warm air, finally free from the chaos of travel. Her cab pulled up, and she tossed the suitcase in the trunk. On the ride to her small apartment downtown, she scrolled through her emails, replying to messages from her boss. Emily worked as a junior designer for a marketing firm, always running between deadlines and dreams of one day owning her own brand. The driver's radio hummed with soft jazz as she stared out the window, unaware that the bag she had just taken didn't belong to her. In another corner of the city, a very different story was unfolding, one that would soon crash into hers in ways she couldn't imagine. At the airport's VIP lounge, Alexander Reed, CEO of Anderson Corp., was growing impatient. His assistant, Clara, stood beside him, nervously clutching a tablet filled with notes. "It's been 20 minutes, he muttered, glancing toward the baggage carousel. "Where is my luggage?" Alexander was tall, sharp-featured, and carried an air of authority that intimidated most people. He had just returned from London, where he'd closed a major deal with international investors. In that suitcase were his tailored suits, personal items, and, most importantly, a confidential file containing details of a new project that could change the company's future. When the carousel finally stopped and his suitcase was nowhere in sight, his jaw tightened. Clara immediately contacted the airport staff, who confirmed the bag had been taken, by mistake. The name linked to it read, Emily Parker. Back at her apartment, Emily kicked off her shoes and dropped her phone on the couch. She opened the suitcase, expecting to find her usual travel clothes and a half-eaten granola bar. But when she lifted the lid, her breath caught. Inside were crisp, neatly folded suits, Italian shoes, and a luxury watch that gleamed under the light. She frowned, thinking she might have opened the wrong bag. Then she spotted a sleek leather folder labeled, Confidential, Anderson Corp. A wave of panic rushed through her. "Oh no," she whispered. She double-checked the tag. The initials engraved in gold were, A.R. Her heart sank. She had taken the wrong luggage. Emily immediately tried to call the airport, but the line was busy. She sat on the edge of her couch, biting her lip as she considered her options. Should she go back? Should she wait for someone to contact her? She imagined the owner of the suitcase, a serious businessman, maybe even a celebrity, furious about the mix-up. She sighed and poured herself a glass of water, trying to calm down. "Okay, Emily," she told herself. "You'll fix this tomorrow morning." But sleep didn't come easily that night. She tossed and turned, replaying the moment she had grabbed the suitcase without looking closely. Meanwhile, Alexander was anything but calm. "Find her," he told Clara sternly. "I want that suitcase before noon tomorrow." His assistant assured him the airline had already tracked the woman's contact information. Still, Alexander couldn't stop thinking about the absurdity of it. How could someone be so careless? He poured himself a drink in his penthouse overlooking the city, the skyline glowing beneath him. Yet beneath his frustration was curiosity. Who was this Emily Parker? What kind of person took a CEO's luggage and didn't return it immediately? He couldn't help but imagine her. Perhaps an older traveler, or maybe someone inexperienced. Either way, he intended to meet her in person. The next morning, sunlight spilled across Emily's small apartment. She rubbed her eyes and glanced at the suitcase still sitting on her coffee table. She hadn't touched anything else inside, afraid of causing more trouble. Her phone buzzed suddenly. An unknown number flashed on the screen. "Hello," she answered hesitantly. A deep, steady voice replied, "Miss Parker, this is Alexander Reed. I believe you have something that belongs to me." Her heart dropped. She stammered, "Oh my God, Mr. Reed, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize," but he interrupted politely, though his tone carried authority. "It's all right. Mistakes happen. I'd appreciate it if we could meet today to exchange our belongings." She agreed immediately, her hands trembling as she hung up. For the rest of the morning, Emily couldn't focus on anything. She cleaned her apartment, ironed her blouse, and practiced what she would say. "Just apologize, give him the suitcase, and leave," she repeated to herself. She had no idea who Alexander Reed really was. One of the youngest CEOs in the country, a man known for his sharp intellect and even sharper instincts. She only knew that she'd embarrassed herself in a way she'd never forget. She wrapped the suitcase carefully and took the subway downtown, rehearsing her apology under her breath. Across town, Alexander adjusted his tie and prepared for the meeting. He wasn't angry anymore, just intrigued. Something about the situation amused him. It was rare for anyone to disrupt his perfect schedule, and this small accident had forced him to step outside his usual world of contracts and conferences. As he left his office, his assistant asked, "Do you want me to come along, sir?" He shook his head. "No, I'll handle this myself." There was something about meeting the mysterious woman who'd taken his suitcase that he didn't want anyone else involved in. Emily arrived at the cafe first, choosing a small table near the window. Her palms were sweaty, and her heart thumped wildly. When Alexander entered, heads turned. He wore a charcoal suit, his presence commanding attention. Emily stood, clutching the suitcase handle tightly. "Mr. Reed," she said softly. He nodded, offering a faint smile. "Miss Parker, I assume." For a moment, their eyes met, hers nervous and apologetic, his curious and unexpectedly kind. Neither of them realized that this simple meeting, born from a mix-up at the airport, would mark the beginning of something that would change both of their lives forever. Emily sat across from Alexander in the quiet corner of the downtown cafe, her fingers nervously twisting the handle of her coffee cup. The aroma of freshly brewed espresso hung in the air, but she barely noticed. She had spent the whole morning dreading this meeting, imagining a furious CEO demanding explanations or threatening to sue her. Instead, the man sitting in front of her looked surprisingly calm, his sharp blue eyes observing her, but not unkindly. He spoke first, his voice steady and composed. "You seem more nervous than someone who stole a suitcase," he said with a hint of humor. Emily blinked, caught off guard, and then laughed awkwardly. "I didn't steal it, I swear. I was just tired and distracted." He smiled faintly. "I figured. It happens more often than people think." The tension in her shoulders eased slightly, though her heart was still racing. After a few minutes, Alexander leaned back, studying her. Emily was nothing like he had imagined. She wasn't some careless traveler or an opportunist, she was just a young woman with tired eyes and an earnest expression. There was something refreshingly real about her, something that made him forget the boardrooms and business meetings waiting for him. "You opened it, didn't you?" he asked casually. Emily froze for a second before admitting, "Just a little. I was trying to find a name or contact number." He chuckled softly. "So you saw my suits and files?" She blushed. "Yes. I promise I didn't touch anything." He nodded. "Good. I'll have to trust you on that." His words were teasing, but his tone was gentle, and she found herself smiling for the first time that day. Their conversation shifted from awkward apologies to easy laughter. Alexander asked what she did for a living, and Emily told him about her job as a marketing designer. "It's not glamorous," she said, stirring her coffee, "but it pays the bills. Someday, I want to start my own brand, something meaningful, not just ads and slogans." He listened attentively, genuinely interested. "That's ambitious," he said. "Most people your age don't talk about purpose, just profit." She laughed lightly. "And you're probably all about profit." He smiled, leaning forward. "Not always, though it keeps the lights on." For a moment, their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, curiosity, admiration, perhaps even the faint spark of connection neither expected. An hour passed before either of them realized how long they'd been talking. The coffee cups were empty, and the morning sun had climbed higher outside. "Well," Emily said reluctantly, "I should let you get back to CEO things." He smiled. "And I should thank you for returning my suitcase instead of selling it online." She laughed again, her nerves now completely gone. He stood up and reached for his briefcase. "Tell you what," he said, pausing. "You owe me one coffee for the trouble. How about dinner instead? My way of forgiving you." Emily's eyes widened. "Dinner? With you?" He grinned. "Only if you promise not to take my wallet next time." She blushed but nodded shyly. "Okay, dinner it is." That evening, Emily stood in front of her closet, heart pounding as she tried to decide what to wear. "It's not a date," she told herself, pulling out a simple navy dress. "Just dinner. A polite thank you dinner." But deep down, she knew it felt like more than that. Alexander had sent a text with the restaurant name, an elegant place downtown she had only seen in magazines. When she arrived, he was already there, looking effortlessly sophisticated in a dark suit. The waiter led her to the table, and Alexander stood to greet her. "You look different," he said softly. "Good different." She smiled nervously. "So do you." Less intimidating. The dinner was nothing like she expected. Alexander was charming, funny, and surprisingly down to earth. He told stories about his early struggles, working from a tiny apartment before his company took off. Emily listened, fascinated. In return, she shared her dreams and frustrations, how she felt invisible in a world chasing perfection. "Sometimes," she said, "I feel like I'm running but not really going anywhere." He looked at her thoughtfully. "Maybe you just need the right direction," he replied. "Or someone to remind you how far you've already come." His words stayed with her long after the meal ended. When they stepped out into the cool night air, the city lights reflected off the glass buildings, casting a golden glow. Emily hesitated by the curb, unsure what to say. Alexander broke the silence first. "I enjoyed tonight," he said. "It's not often I meet someone who isn't trying to impress me." She smiled softly. "Maybe that's because I already embarrassed myself at the airport." He laughed. "Best mistake I've had in years." Their laughter faded into a comfortable silence. Then, without overthinking, he asked, "Would you like to do this again sometime?" She nodded slowly. "I'd like that." Over the next few weeks, their paths crossed again and again. Sometimes it was lunch between his meetings, sometimes coffee after her work. Their worlds were vastly different, his full of power and responsibility, hers filled with creativity and chaos, but they somehow balanced each other. Emily brought lightness to his structured life, and Alexander brought confidence to her uncertain one. They didn't label what was happening, but everyone around them noticed. His assistant, Clara, once teased, "You've been smiling a lot lately, sir." "New project." Alexander only smirked. Something like that. But not everything was easy. Emily often wondered if she truly fit into his world. Once, after attending a corporate event with him, she confessed, "I felt like everyone was looking at me, like I didn't belong." He took her hand gently. "You belong anywhere you choose to be, Emily. Don't ever let people make you feel otherwise." That reassurance, simple yet sincere, made her heart swell. She realized then that Alexander wasn't just the confident CEO everyone admired. He was human, capable of care and understanding that few people ever saw. Months passed, and what started as a luggage mix-up became something neither of them could walk away from. Emily's once chaotic life began to find balance, her creativity thriving with newfound confidence. Alexander, too, changed. He laughed more, worked less, and began to see beyond his empire of meetings and numbers. One evening, as they walked along the Santa Monica Pier, he stopped suddenly, turning to her. "You know," he said, "if you hadn't taken my suitcase that day, we might never have met." She smiled up at him. Then maybe it wasn't a mistake after all. He chuckled softly, taking her hand. "No," he said, "it was fate in disguise." As the waves crashed softly below and the lights shimmered above the ocean, Emily rested her head on his shoulder. Life, with all its chaos and coincidences, had brought two strangers together in the most unexpected way. The CEO who once cared only for deadlines had found someone who reminded him of life's simple joys. And the woman who once rushed through airports, lost in her own world, had found something she didn't even know she was missing: love born from a mistake that turned out to be the best decision of her life.